John Deere is collapsing over a small decision from Canada. Thousands of workers lose their jobs, triggering a serious crisis. What happened? Canada tightens supply chain, paralyzing John Deere, a crisis in American agriculture. With a small change in Canada's export regulations has shattered their entire sustainable supply chain. From Iowa to Nebraska, factories have gone silent one after another. Machinery has stopped working due to lack of spare parts. Showrooms, once the pride of American farmers, are now empty, with no products to sell. Farmers are restless during a crucial planting season, waiting for essential parts that never arrive on time. This is not a typical economic downturn, but an industrial choke caused by tightened administrative paperwork. The supply chain has collapsed, and American agriculture faces an unprecedented challenge. Can you imagine? One of America's oldest and strongest industries, brought down by seemingly simple regulations. President Trump threatens 200% tariffs, terrifying economic pressure on John Deere. Amid a paralyzed supply chain, President Trump warned of imposing import tariffs up to 200% on John Deere products.
Notifying John Deere right now, if you do that, we're putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States.
This is not just a threat, but a massive economic pressure, doubling production costs. Imagine production lines freezing due to missing components, while the heavy tariff burden drives equipment prices higher, directly impacting farmers and the market. A worker with over 25 years at the Iowa plant said, "We've never faced such intense pressure. Machines are idle, and jobs disappear every day." This pressure weighs not only on the company, but also spreads to every worker and their families, creating serious social consequences. American farmers lose trust, turn to imported equipment, an unprecedented crisis of confidence. The paralyzed supply chain has caused American farmers to lose faith in John Deere. When dealerships run out of stock, they are forced to choose foreign brands like Kubota or Mahindra to continue production. A farmer from Nebraska shared, "I've been loyal to John Deere for 30 years, but when the machinery breaks down and there are no spare parts, I have no choice but to switch brands to avoid losing the harvest." This is not just a product change, but a profound loss of trust in a brand that was once an icon of American agriculture. John Deere dealerships quietly import foreign products to retain customers. One dealer admitted, "We have the brand, the uniforms, but now we're just selling air, like a grocery store without food." This marks a historic turning point when, as America's fertile lands become alienated from their own symbol. The pressure of product shortages and lack of spare parts has forced many farmers to change long-standing habits, opening the door for foreign brands to gain market share in the U.S. Where protectionist tariff policies fail miserably, protecting domestic industry but hurting itself. John Deere is being strangled not only by tariffs, but also by tightened export regulations from Canada. Protectionist tariff policies aimed at retaining domestic production have not worked. Instead, they've caused serious unintended consequences. States that once supported these policies, such as Iowa, Michigan, and Ohio, are now appealing to the Canadian government as their agricultural sectors face the risk of decline. Some states have even started inviting foreign manufacturers to invest, hoping to salvage the situation. This reality shows that trade barriers not only choke domestic companies, but also push local communities into hardship, as jobs and incomes suffer severely. Turning away from global supply chains may protect manufacturing in the short term, but causes long-lasting damage that is difficult to recover from.
Putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States, so that if I win, John Deere is going to be paying a 200%. They haven't started it.
$400,000 for a single tractor. Yes, double the original price. And the reason? A tariff order from the White House. Before John Deere could even react, the market had already begun to shake. John Deere faces a 200% tariff. At a town hall in Pennsylvania, former President Donald Trump announced a 200% tariff on John Deere machinery imported from Mexico. That means a $200,000 tractor now costs $400,000, an increase that has dealers and farmers alike worried. John Deere responded immediately, stating it was conducting a comprehensive assessment of the new policy and potential countermeasures. Behind closed doors, engineers are crunching numbers because if they fail to adapt, who pays the price? Farmers, consumers, or the entire U.S. economy? What's more, the production lines in Mexico have been saving John Deere tens of millions of dollars each year. Relocating back to the U.S. would not only be costly, but also time-consuming. On top of that, nearly 40% of components in their best-selling models come from abroad, meaning the tariff doesn't just hit assembly lines, but could disrupt the entire supply chain. Impact on farmers and manufacturing. Immediately following the announcement, dealers reported a spike in orders within just a week. Farmers rushed to buy equipment before the tariff took effect. But behind the urgency lies a growing fear. If retroactive taxes are imposed, who will bear the massive cost difference? At agricultural fairs in Kansas and Iowa, the mood turned grim. "We're just watching. We haven't dared to sign anything," one farmer said. And the looming question, buy now to lock in prices, or wait and risk doubling your costs. John Deere's strategic response. Facing this sudden blow, John Deere didn't retreat. It shifted into strategic mode, launching 3 major moves nearly simultaneously. First, the company accelerated reinvestment into plants in Iowa and Illinois, facilities previously scaled back due to high operating costs. Now, despite expensive domestic labor, Deere sees this as the only way to reduce dependence on cross-border supply chains, now a liability under tariff threats. Resuming U.S. production is not only an economic decision, but also a symbolic gesture to regain domestic market trust. Second, Deere ramped up lobbying in Washington, seeking tariff exemptions for key agricultural components like drive systems and smart control units. If successful, the company could maintain stable pricing without sacrificing quality or profit. But this is a long game, requiring political leverage. Failure could send ripple effects across the agricultural machinery sector. Third, Deere began restructuring its supply chain, shifting some production to Canada or other low-tariff countries. This is a global flexibility gamble aimed at avoiding being boxed in by an escalating trade war. Policy impacts and global reverberations. The impact doesn't stop at Deere. Other manufacturers, from Caterpillar to GM, are watching cautiously. Economists warn that if trade tensions persist, next quarter's GDP could shrink. Countries like Canada and Mexico have already responded. The EU and Japan are preparing cases to challenge the US at the WTO. In strategy rooms, analysts are modeling what-if scenarios. If the 200% tariff holds, production costs will balloon. If reduced to 50% on imported parts, companies might catch a breath. As May 15th approaches, pressure builds by the hour. Businesses await rulings, investors sit on cash, and those behind the tractor wheel, the farmers, may cast decisive votes in the upcoming election. Meanwhile, China watches from the sidelines, but not passively. Manufacturers in Shanghai and Guangdong are already expanding their lines, ready to absorb production flows leaving Mexico. Some experts warn if the US overplays its internal tariffs, Beijing could be the biggest winner from this global repositioning. Will the administration ease off or tighten the screws? If this is a test of endurance, it's also a reminder. Tariff decisions aren't just numbers. They shape the fate of entire industries. 14,000 American jobs gone. $55 million invested, but not in the USA. When an iconic brand like John Deere packs up and leaves, it raises a simple question. Is the American dream still made in America? In 2024, John Deere, the nearly 200-year-old symbol of American farming, announced a $55 million investment in a new factory in Ramos Arizpe, Mexico. The plant will build skid steer loaders and compact track loaders, the same machines that once symbolized the heartland. Why move? Costs in the US are rising, and wages in Mexico? Up to 70% lower. Meanwhile, Brazil and Argentina, 2 agricultural giants with over $300 billion in exports, are hungry for equipment. In early 2025, Deere even hinted at expanding operations in Mexico, targeting a Latin market growing 10% per year. This isn't outsourcing. It's a global strategy reset. The 45th president vowed to bring jobs back. But a 25% tariff on vehicles from Mexico and Canada had unintended effects. General Motors closed 5 factories and laid off 14,000 workers. In towns like Lordstown, Ohio, workers like Mike, 20 years on the GM floor, now work night shifts at Amazon. "I'm not angry," he says, "but what's left of this town without the plant?" Today, 30% of GM vehicles sold in the U.S. come from foreign plants. And according to the Center for Automotive Research, those tariffs could add up to $3,000 per vehicle. Now, a new threat: a 200% tariff on John Deere products made outside the U.S. Sounds tough. But let's be real. Companies don't pay tariffs. Consumers do. GM invested $35 billion in electric vehicles. Models like the Cadillac Lyriq start at $60,000. The Silverado EV, up to 450 miles per charge. And 3 new EV models are coming by late 2025. But here's the catch. EV manufacturing needs 30 to 40% fewer workers than traditional cars. Why? Automation. Robots don't take breaks, don't need health insurance, and don't form unions. So even if production moves back to America, the jobs may not. And it's not just the factories. EVs themselves require less maintenance, fewer parts, fewer repairs. That means fewer mechanics, fewer supply chain jobs, and fewer dealership service techs. The shift to electric isn't just about energy, it's a full system reset. And in this reset, workers aren't just being replaced, they're being left behind. When Deere announced the move to Mexico, stocks barely moved. Investors liked the global shift. Meanwhile, GM shares dropped over 6% as costs, tariffs, and EV risks rattled confidence. Steel prices in the US rose over 20% in 2024. Add tariffs, and prices for cars and equipment keep climbing. Who's stuck in the middle? Farmers, families, everyday Americans, paying more for less. While America First echoes on campaign trails, companies like Deere and GM are redrawing the manufacturing map. And those red dots are drifting far beyond the 50 states.
They've announced a few days ago that they're going to move a lot of their manufacturing business to Mexico. I'm just notifying John Deere right now. If you do that, we're putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States.
Speaking to farmers in Pennsylvania today, Trump laid out another part of his economic agenda, saying he would put a 200% tariff on John Deere imports if the company moves production to Mexico as planned.
In just a few months, America's most iconic farming brand, John Deere, was forced to shut down factories and lay off hundreds of workers across the Midwest. No trade war, no pandemic. Just a small change at the Canadian border, and the whole machine froze. No tariffs, no loud declarations, just a technical adjustment in Canada's supply chain inspection rules. And crucial machine parts got stuck at the border. Amid global shortages and inflation, Canada tightened controls on transport standards, certification, and import clearance. The result? Vital components stalled. And since the U.S. has long relied on a seamless trade corridor with Canada, that reliance turned into vulnerability overnight. This wasn't a blockade, it was a bureaucratic bottleneck dressed in paperwork and policy. What used to take hours now takes weeks. Every shipment needs extra documentation, random inspections, and new routing compliance. And for just-in-time manufacturing like John Deere's, those delays are a death sentence. Since mid-2024, John Deere has cut over 600 jobs in Iowa and Illinois, 2 of its largest production hubs. Officially, it's called strategic adjustment, but analysts say it's a supply crisis in disguise. One engineer in Onamwa, Iowa, revealed, "We've got steel frames and engines, but no hydraulic sensors, no control modules, so nothing runs." And it's not just the factory. Local diners, hardware shops, subcontractors, they all took a hit in Q3. Assembly lines are frozen, shift schedules slashed. Overtime? Gone. Some workers say they now spend more time waiting than welding. And with paychecks shrinking, entire communities are tightening their belts. You can't away a harvest because you're missing a Deere box. Yet, that's what happened to over 2,000 farmers during July and August 2024. With no replacements in stock, dealers across the Midwest could only apologize. Some farmers rented foreign machines. Others postponed planting. A Nebraska dealership even started testing European brands like Fendt. When the corn waits for no one, loyalty is the first thing to go. Fields sat idle while skies threatened rain. Repair shops had backlogs stretching weeks. One farmer joked, "I've got crops spraying harder than I do." Emergency rentals drove costs up, eating into already thin profit margins. And once a harvest is missed, you don't just lose income, you lose trust in your tools. Meanwhile, foreign competitors smelled blood. Kubota from Japan, Mahindra from India, Fendt from Germany, all gained ground fast in late 2024. No price war needed. They just showed up on time, with parts in stock and mechanics on call. A Kansas dealer put it bluntly, "I never thought I'd sell Mahindra, but I won't keep an empty showroom while my clients walk out." As DC debates inflation and interest rates, states like Iowa, Ohio, and Michigan are done waiting. They're drafting bilateral trade MOUs around the Great Lakes, launching incentive packages to bring component manufacturing home. No instant results yet, but the message is clear. Local leaders are done trusting federal readiness in times of crisis. The John Deere disaster isn't just about tractors, it's a wake-up call. Even the safest partner can become a bottleneck. Even the most stable supply chain can break. Experts are urging diversification, fast, because next time it might not be tractors. It could be medical equipment, defense systems, or critical tech. And next time, there might not be time to reopt.
We've been ripped off for years, and we're not going to be ripped off anymore.
I got to start off asking you about how some of these macro shocks are impacting your business.
Just to name a few, are all growing in scarcity and they're increasing in cost.
It's great to be here, fully autonomous. That's the first time ever that we've been able to take the operator out of the cab of the machine.
Trump laid out another part of his economic agenda, saying he would put a 200% tariff on John Deere imports.
Former President Donald Trump promised to hit John Deere with a 200% tariff on any products not made in the U.S.
John Deere is investing $55 million to open a factory in Mexico, accounting for less than 5% of its North American output. Immediately, President Trump threatened to impose a 200% tariff on all imported John Deere products. This story reveals much about the future of U.S. manufacturing and agriculture, current situation, and John Deere's market response. John Deere chose Mexico due to labor costs up to 70% lower, combined with skilled workforce and modern infrastructure, allowing significant savings in production costs. Additionally, Mexico's geographic location provides quick access to rapidly growing agricultural markets in South America, like Brazil, Argentina, and Colombia, regions with soaring demand for farm equipment. In contrast, manufacturing in the U.S. faces major challenges: rising labor and operational costs, supply chain disruptions, labor shortages, and port congestion delays all put great pressure on businesses. Shifting part of production to Mexico is not abandoning the U.S., but a strategic move to optimize costs and improve efficiency in an increasingly competitive global environment. John Deere still keeps most core products manufactured in the U.S. to maintain strong ties with the domestic market. Although this news initially caused a slight drop in John Deere's stock due to concerns, it quickly recovered as financial experts saw this as a necessary decision to maintain its position. In fact, if tariffs are imposed, foreign-only manufacturers would be hit harder, indirectly giving John Deere a competitive advantage. President Trump's strong reaction. President Trump responded very harshly by threatening the 200% tariff on John Deere products made abroad, calling it a betrayal of American workers. He wanted to send a strong message that keeping production at home protects traditional jobs and warned other companies against leaving the U.S. However, in the context of fast-changing global markets and technology, this tariff measure could backfire. Instead of preserving jobs, high tariffs could raise production costs, making it harder for farmers and increasing equipment prices. It is a complex dilemma balancing domestic labor protection with adapting to modern economic realities. Social political impact in the future of manufacturing. This event sparks deep controversy, especially in rural America. Farmers and workers are caught between conflicting interests and politics. Some support Trump's call to protect traditional jobs, but many understand John Deere is trying to adapt to a volatile global market. Lawmakers have also intervened, holding hearings and warning about the negative impacts of tariffs on agriculture and manufacturing. Meanwhile, John Deere is ramping up lobbying efforts to protect its interests. Moreover, John Deere is heavily investing in automation and AI technologies, self-driving tractors, drones for pest monitoring, and smart farm management software. If it's truly the future of agricultural production. Oxford Economics forecasts that by 2030, up to 20 million manufacturing jobs could be lost due to automation. So, is traditional protectionism still relevant as robots gradually replace humans? The battle between traditional protectionism and the trends of globalization and technological innovation is more intense than ever. American farmers face two difficult choices: hold on to the past or adapt to the times.
Farmers in Pennsylvania today, Trump laid out another part of his economic agenda, saying he would put a 200% tariff on John Deere imports if the company moves production to Mexico as planned.
It's hurting our farmers. It's hurting our manufacturers. I just noticed behind me John Deere tractors. I know a lot about John Deere. I love the company. But as you know, they've announced a few days ago that they're going to move a lot of their manufacturing business to Mexico. I'm just notifying John Deere right now. If you do that, we're putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States.
John Deere is making waves by investing $55 million in a new factory in Mexico. Sounds like a smart move, right? Well, Donald Trump has fired back, threatening a 200% tariff on Deere's foreign-made products. John Deere, known for its industrial machinery and agricultural equipment, has decided to shift some of its production to Mexico. The new factory will focus on mini excavators and small tractors, essential gear for the booming agricultural markets in Latin America. Now, this move comes after a 25% increase in labor costs in the U.S. over the past 5 years. Meanwhile, labor in Mexico is up to 70% cheaper than in the U.S. So the decision makes perfect sense financially. But it's not just about saving money. Deere's move is a direct response to the growing demand in countries like Brazil and Colombia, which have seen explosive growth in agricultural markets. Deere isn't just playing it safe, they're thinking globally. The president wasn't going to sit quietly. He immediately lambasted Deere's decision, calling it a betrayal. The man was fired up, threatening to slap 200% tariffs on any Deere machinery made outside the U.S. But here's the real kicker: Deere's decision only affects about 5% of its production in North America. That's right, tractors and harvesters will still be made in the U.S., and 14,000 jobs in Iowa and Illinois are safe. So, is Trump really trying to save American jobs, or is this just another political move to rile up the base? Deere's shift to Mexico isn't as drastic as it sounds. It's simply a strategic move in today's fast-paced global economy. But Trump's rhetoric? Well, that's another matter entirely. Why did John Deere do it? The answer is simple: economics. Manufacturing costs in the US are up and supply chains have been disrupted. Meanwhile, labor is in short supply, and Deere's competitors in Japan and India have been able to maintain lower costs, making it harder for U.S. companies to compete. Mexico's cheap labor costs offer a competitive advantage, so Deere is making a play for a slice of the global market. They're not abandoning America, they're just trying to stay competitive in a rapidly changing industry. It's not just about cutting costs, it's about survival in the global marketplace. As expected, Trump's comments sparked a divided response from the public. Some say Deere is just adapting to the global economy, while others see it as a betrayal of American workers. Deere has been quick to reassure the public, emphasizing that the expansion only affects a small portion of U.S. production. Their main products, like tractors and harvesters, will still be made domestically. But here's the real question: is Deere's move to Mexico a one-time thing, or will other companies follow suit? The larger question is whether the global economy is forcing American companies to make hard decisions. Despite the political backlash, Wall Street has responded with cautious optimism. Deere's stock rebounded quickly, and analysts are generally supportive of the decision. Agricultural markets are thriving in Latin America, and Deere is positioning itself to capitalize on that growth. Deere's expansion into Mexico allows it to maintain a strong U.S. presence while tapping into these new markets. But that's not all. Deere is also investing heavily in automation and AI technologies. The company isn't just thinking about today, They're preparing for the future. Deere's commitment to autonomous tractors and AI-driven farming tools shows they're positioning themselves as leaders in agricultural technology. It's not just about surviving, it's about thriving in the next phase of farming. The real issue goes beyond tariffs and labor costs. It's about the future of work itself. With automation rapidly advancing, experts predict that by 2030, 20 million jobs could be replaced by machines globally. Deere is moving towards automation to stay ahead of this shift. This trend isn't just about where products are made, but how they're made. Deere's investment in automation marks the beginning of a much larger transformation in the economy. The electric vehicle market in Africa is predicted to reach over $17 billion by 2025. Countries like Morocco and South Africa are leading this green revolution, bringing huge economic growth and environmental benefits. But what about the shocking claims of 30,000 self-charging electric cars daily in Zimbabwe? The African electric vehicle market is expected to hit $17.41 billion by 2025, growing at over 10% annually, according to industry reports. Countries such as Morocco, Egypt, and Rwanda have become hotspots for automotive giants like Volkswagen, Nissan, BYD, and Toyota. Morocco alone produces around 40,000 electric vehicles annually, with plans to reach 100,000 within 2 years. This local production boom not only cuts shipping costs and import taxes, but also boosts domestic industrial capacity, creates jobs, and accelerates technology transfer. Africa is quickly evolving from just a consumer market to a global manufacturing hub for EVs. One of the standout economic benefits of the EV surge in Africa is job creation. In South Africa, the automotive sector employs over 100,000 people, and the shift toward electric vehicles is set to raise that number significantly. Morocco is building crucial supply chains for EV materials by collaborating with countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo and Zambia to mine cobalt and copper, key elements for lithium-ion batteries. Developing local supply chains reduces reliance on imports, stabilizes production costs, and boosts value addition domestically. This strengthens competitiveness on the global stage and fosters sustainable economic growth. Electric vehicles play a vital role in reducing pollution in densely populated urban areas by cutting emissions and noise levels. This helps improve public health, lowering respiratory illnesses, and raising overall quality of life. In rural parts of Africa, where public transport is limited, EVs offer an eco-friendly transportation option, helping people access schools, hospitals, and markets more easily. However, these benefits are still limited by the high price of EVs and a lack of charging infrastructure, especially in remote regions. Despite the promising outlook, Africa faces several critical challenges. The current price of electric vehicles remains high relative to average incomes, restricting widespread adoption. Public charging stations are sparse and unevenly distributed, making EV usage difficult in rural and remote areas. Moreover, imported U.S. EV vehicles, averaging 7 to 11 years old, still dominate the roads, prolonging the lifespan of traditional gasoline cars and slowing the green transition. Nonetheless, Africa's abundant renewable energy resources, like solar and wind, present opportunities to develop clean, cost-effective charging networks that could lower operational costs long-term and protect the environment. Tesla is known for its premium electric vehicles, advanced lithium-ion battery technology, and extensive charging network. However, Tesla's model requires comprehensive infrastructure and large investments, which may not perfectly fit African market conditions. African EV strategies focus on producing simple, durable, and easy-to-repair vehicles suited to rough roads and limited infrastructure. Countries like Morocco and Rwanda leverage plentiful solar and wind energy to reduce operating costs and build an EV ecosystem tailored to local realities. This practical and accessible model offers a more sustainable growth path compared to Tesla's expensive battery-centric approach.